Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're zooming in on a date that is genuinely shaping up to be one of the most important milestones in stablecoin history, July 18th. Now, let's get something straight right out of the gate. This isn't a massive deal because some flashy new stablecoin is launching. Nope, it's way bigger than that. July 18th is all about the rulemaking process. It's the kickoff for regulators deciding exactly how the entire stablecoin industry is going to operate from here on out. If you're building, investing, or even just hanging out in this space, you absolutely need to know what's coming. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to breeze through the July 18 milestone, break down the Genius Act, look at the reality of rulemaking, why stablecoins must adapt, who actually wins this regulatory era, and finally, why trust has to come before the rules. Let's just dive right in. All right, Section 1, the July 18 milestone. Whether you're a developer, a massive institution, or just someone who occasionally uses USDC to pay a friend, I've got a core question for you. What actually happens the day a crypto law passes? Seriously, take a second to think about it. Because most people treat regulation like a light switch. You flip it and boom, the worlds are on. But the reality? It's a lot more like an iceberg. That expectation that the law passes and the rules just instantly exist, that's literally just the tip poking out of the water. The reality is this massive, unseen amount of work happening right below the surface. Once the headlines fade, federal agencies start this very long, very quiet process of translating a high-level law into actual, enforceable, everyday regulations. And that brings us to a really important number, 6. Over the next few months following this legislation, 6 different U.S. federal agencies are going to sit down and start writing the very specific rules that will reshape stablecoins for years to come. This is the real heavy lifting of government regulation, and it happens completely out of the public eye. Moving on to Section 2, the Genius Act explained. To really grasp why July 18 is such a big deal, we've got to look at the legislation itself. The Genius Act is, without a doubt, one of the most significant pieces of U.S. legislation ever designed to create a legal framework for payment stablecoins. For years, stablecoins have basically lived in this dense fog of regulatory uncertainty. Banks were too cautious to jump in, developers were flying blind, and projects operated under completely different interpretations of the law. The Genius Act is trying to clear that fog and pour a solid legal foundation. But you have to think of regulation as infrastructure. The Genius Act, it's just the blueprint. A law establishes the high-level principles, but it absolutely does not answer every single operational question. And that right there is exactly where the rulemaking begins and exactly why July 18 and the months that follow matter so much. Which brings us to Section 3, the reality of rulemaking. So how does a law actually become a rule? Well, here's the pipeline. Step 1, the agencies draft the initial regulations based on the law. Step 2, and this is a huge one, public consultation and industry feedback. This is the moment for the crypto industry to actually speak up and be heard. Step 3, they make revisions based on all that feedback. And finally, Step 4 is the final implementation. The law just starts the conversation, but this pipeline right here, this dictates how the real world actually operates. Remember that underwater part of the iceberg we were just talking about? This is it. During this quiet, rulemaking phase, federal agencies have to figure out some seriously complex stuff. What does compliance actually look like? How exactly do reserves need to be managed? What specific disclosures are required? They're mapping out supervision, audits, enforcement. I mean, this is the nitty-gritty detail that will dictate the day-to-day life of every single stablecoin. All right, Section 4, why stablecoins must adapt. If you're a founder or an investor, you need to be watching this process like a hawk, because future guidance is going to force some massive changes across 2 main pillars, operational impact and market impact. Operationally, projects are going to have to completely overhaul their risk management protocols, meet brand new licensing expectations, and dial in their consumer protection standards. And on the market side, this guidance directly impacts institutional access, the flow of cross-border payments, and the absolute non-negotiable need for reserve transparency. Some projects are going to wake up and realize they need a massive operational pivot just to survive. But look, there is a massive silver lining here. Clearer rules naturally lead to reduced uncertainty. And when you lower the uncertainty, you unlock much larger pools of institutional capital. So regulation isn't automatically this bearish, terrible thing for the crypto market. In a lot of ways, it's the essential infrastructure needed to fuel unprecedented growth. Moving to Section 5, who wins the regulatory era? Let's be real about who actually comes out on top here. History tells us that massive institutions, the big banks, the asset managers, the payment networks, they value predictability above pretty much everything else. If you go to them and ask, hey, is this innovative? You're asking the wrong question. Pure innovation just isn't enough for them. The right question, literally the only one they truly care about, is can we trust it? So who wins? The projects that have these specific traits totally dialed in. Transparent reserves, completely independent audits, rock-solid governance, clear compliance, and incredibly responsible communication. The winners of this new regulatory era are not going to be the loudest, most hyped projects on social media. They're going to be the most prepared ones. And that leads perfectly into our final part, Section 6, Trust Before the Rules. I want to leave you with a really powerful, actionable takeaway. Regulation doesn't create trust. It reinforces it. Seriously, think about that. Trust is earned long before a government rule is ever finalized. The smartest Web3 companies know they can't just sit around waiting for a regulatory stamp of approval to magically make the public trust them. So what do they do instead? They get proactive. They don't just vanish into thin air between major announcements. They actively educate the market. They regularly publish updates explaining their progress. They show up in respected media. They build founder credibility. And above all, they communicate consistently. These are the exact steps every serious project should be taking right this second. And it all boils down to a super reliable 3-step formula. Step 1, visibility creates familiarity. The more people see you, the more they know you. Step 2, familiarity creates confidence. Once they understand how you actually operate, they start to trust you. And step 3, confidence is what actually drives adoption. Yes, the underlying tech matters, absolutely, but your reputation is often what gets institutions to actually pull the trigger and adopt it. So here's the bottom line. July 18 is not the end of the Genius Act story, not even close. It's the beginning of a massive regulatory transition for the entire stablecoin industry. If you are building anything in Web3 or fintech right now, you have got to start building your credibility today, long before the market forces you to. The projects that crush it won't just adapt to the new rules, they'll already have the trust they need to thrive. I'm going to leave you with one final thought to chew on today. Will clearer regulation ultimately be the catalyst that accelerates stablecoin adoption? Given everything we've unpacked today about institutional trust and essential infrastructure, the ground is definitely shifting beneath us. Think about how these upcoming rules might completely change the way you interact with digital assets in the near future. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes peeled on the months ahead.
Subscribe and visit Web3 Newswire for visibility and credibility of your Web3 projects.